multinational banks such as Nomura and HSBC, who are pointing to a continuity at the centre amid ongoing Lok Sabha elections, while also calling for tougher reforms to spur growth. Optimism in India's growth shows little signs of slowing, but policy continuity will be crucial if it wants to see strong growth in next 5 years. This according to Nomura's chief economist. Now, Nomura has projected that India's economy could grow by an average of 7% in the next 5 years if the current policies driving growth stay in place. Analysts say that the government could consider land, capital, judicial reforms, as well as simplifying direct as well as indirect taxes and administration. It could also look at bringing electricity, oil and gas and alcohol under goods and services regime. Well, those are of course reforms that will be needed, and those are reforms that the next government could be looking at. My colleague, senior editor Rakesh Khar joining me here. No better man to talk about the reforms that this country needs than you, Rakesh. You keep talking about it, but in an order of priority, be it land, labour, what should be government's priority if and when it comes back, or whichever government comes to power next?
Well, hi Shweta, this government has set a 100-day agenda if it comes back to power. That does not include either of these two. At least they have not come public with that, whether land and these reforms are on the table. But we don't know that Modi, the current regime, did try the very radical farm reform law only to roll it back. So in that sense, I think they're all interconnected as fundamentals for the growth imperative that this government has set up for itself. And you're right, these are agendas that should be the most important stuff when it comes to driving the economic growth story for any government that comes back, on June 4, 2024.
Right.
What is striking about the Nomura and HSBC, prescription in regard to, the reforms is also the fact that probably for the first time, a banker as big or as international as HSBC has stuck its neck out and given a figure in terms of what the number could be for the results on June 4. That is a little unprecedented to my mind. While it's
about 323.
That's what we saw. I mean, I haven't seen the statement myself, but I'm more so to say interested in watching a top global bank come out with a number.
Okay.
Nomura hasn't come out with a number; it has come out with a broad prescription.
Right.
But it's important to point out, Shweta, here that whether it's IMF, World Bank, or it is individuals like Jamie Dimon, whether it is Christopher Woods, it's Mark Mobius, John Chambers, the list can go on and on and on. There are massive, tailwinds that the world sees in India growth story, and rightly, Mr. Modi takes credit for that. Though I did mention, and I repeat, the farm law repeal is reform repeal is a bit of a setback, and we do remember that in the first term Mr. Modi talked about the land acquisition being reformed, because that's intrinsically linked to the manufacturing story for the business to kick in and bring about the big capex that we are looking forward to. But it was, so to say, pinned down by the Sood Boot Ki Sarkar jibe by the opposition.
Right.
We hope that it's a decisive mandate for whosoever comes into the
power,
and they are able to, so to say, bring about the reforms that all of us are eagerly waiting forward to.
And what are these reforms that some of us are waiting for? Come to think of it, agri reforms were rolled back, but there is still room for GST reforms, and we could perhaps see in the coming future fuel and oil and electricity be brought under GST. Could that be also in making? Are you picking on that?
I think GST, we have talked about it, Shweta, in the past as well. I think the finance minister who heads the current GST council has gone on record to say that we will look at, so to say, reviewing the GST performance. Of course, on the numbers, GST has really outdone the expectations that we had for, it's a very, very strong and robust trajectory that we have for GST. Revenue receipts, creating a new paradigm for the government revenues.
Absolutely. Month on month collections.
Month on month, I mean, the average is pretty good, and the numbers are growing every month, showing a very strong, upward tick in the business sentiment. That is quite likely as among the first of the key reforms that will happen. Whether there will be a single tariff cut, as is being sort of suggested by our opposition leader Rahul Gandhi, which to my mind needs an academic debate. But there is also a room for further rationalization, and the items that you mentioned could probably be brought back under lower rates. Whether alcohol will fit in there, that is one of the items mentioned in GST reforms, I think by Nomura. I have my doubts, but fuel likely. but a review is due. A review is also due in GST in terms of, so to say, fleshing out the expectations of the states who are part of the GST Council and are equal stakeholders in terms of revenue receipts.
And some of these states, at least in the south, have been a little unhappy on the revenue sharing agreement with the centre. Could that also be taken up? Are you expecting that problem to also be addressed once and for all?
Well, that's not purely in the GST remit, that is also in the remit of the 16th Finance Commission.
It is,
which is now being led by Arvind Panagaria. So Arvind Panagaria, you would remember, Shweta was the first chief economic, was the first, Niti Aayog, when it was recalled from Planning Commission, re-articulated as Niti Aayog. He was there as the vice chairman. He didn't stay on till the next term, but he's an eminent academician who actually helped build the first manifesto in 2013 from Mr. Modi. I had the opportunity to interview him 2-3 times. He's as bullish as he was on Prime Minister Modi. So we do expect some reforms there as part of the 16th Finance Commission. I think the other big reform, Shweta, that has already been set in by this government, if it comes back to power, is ease of doing business.
Right.
So what has happened is that ease of doing business was suspended by World Bank. It's a World Bank originated study, and India really did well and grew in rankings. But then globally there was some review of the ranking system, and World Bank stopped doing the ease of doing business. But now they have said that they will again start those ratings, and India has already commenced work on reimagining those ratings.
Right.
I personally feel there is tremendous work to be done.
Right. So I want to come to that. I can't let you go, and we are short on time. I can't let you go without asking you. We're in the midst of biggest elections anywhere in the world. What are your expectations from whichever government comes to power? What should be the trajectory that this country takes from here on, from what it has achieved in the last 10 years?
It would be naive and stupid to reverse the economic growth story for anyone who comes to power. And I think I'm happy to share that, having watched the India economic growth story, there is a broad consensus on the economy taking a certain direction. I think this allegedly very left of center and highly socialist view of the capital markets and capital as such is slightly disconcerting. That is worrying me. So if that is mitigated, then I think we are on track, and by and large all key thought leaders, whether in the opposition or in the government, are aligned to the economic growth story. So I think they'll all put their heads together to sustain this 7% plus and make it probably double digit, which is very important. I was talking about the ease of doing business. I think that's a huge lacuna. What happened in Gujarat, for instance, when Modi was there, the Gujarat model, he brought about this transformation about bringing in businesses and giving them that comfort that when you come in, you will have a single window clearance, like he did for Sanad with the Tata project when it moved out from West Bengal. Unfortunately, 10 years in the center, we have not been able to replicate that model. I think the clearances and the actual on-ground projects taking off, there is a gap between the intent and the actual delivery when it comes to businesses, especially global investors, actually wanting to set up the plant at the grassroots level. I think they still face difficulties. That's where ease of doing business needs to be eased.
Absolutely. Ease of doing business perhaps could be one of the priorities, should be one of the priorities that, according to our senior editor here, if and whenever this government comes back, if not for the next government, perhaps to not tamper with India's growth model, the growth trajectory it has taken on in the last 1 decade.